Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to the third and final stream of today, Saturday, qualifying day for the first Grand Prix of 2021, the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix, of course, and tonight, my time, of course, 7:30 at night, UK time. We are, after what happened in qualifying and the incredible events of that session, I'm going to be getting into the race and previewing how I think the race will go based off of what we saw earlier in qualifying and just where I think things will end up. Also, we'll update you as to, or give you some more information as to why the order finished the way it did. For example, Sebastian Vettel qualifying 18th wasn't down to pure pace or poor pace, kind of both there, pure and poor pace. It was also down to something else, which we'll get onto later on. But also give you some additional information, such as top speeds and sector times, that will really, I think, give you a better indicator for tomorrow's race as to who you need to look out for in terms of overtaking and who's looking good aerodynamically around this track. We'll get into that soon enough. But hopefully you guys, after qualifying, doing well. Hopefully you've calmed down a bit. I got very excited, I think it's safe to say, with this man on screen getting pole position. But yeah, for about, 45 minutes to an hour at most, we're going to preview the Grand Prix. And hopefully you'll join me tonight and giving your thoughts as to how the Grand Prix will go. So, if, firstly, you did not watch qualifying, listen to my watch along, and you don't know the results, well, you can see them on the left-hand side of the screen, firstly. But let me get into also the lap times. So here are the full results of qualifying. Max Verstappen on pole for the first time in Bahrain by 0.4 of a second. Incredible lap time. The only man into the 1 minute 28s as well. Lewis Hamilton second, Valtteri Bottas third, Charles Leclerc fourth. What a fantastic day for Ferrari it has been. Fifth, Pierre Gasly. Sixth, Ricciardo. Seventh, Norris. Eighth, Carlos Sainz. And then Fernando Alonso on his return to Formula 1, qualifying ninth in the Alpine. What a drive I think that is, considering where Ocon is, even though Ocon was hampered by yellow flags. And then Lance Stroll 10th. Thought he drove well as well. And then knockdown Q2 was Sergio Perez, disappointingly, Antonio Giovinazzi, Yuki Tsunoda, Kimi Raikkonen and George Russell. And then knockdown Q1, Ocon, Latifi, Sebastian Vettel, Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. When it comes to, again, some of the bottom drivers there, we'll get into a bit more detail later on as to why they ended up where they did in surprising positions because of stuff that wasn't really in their control. But I think what we'll do is first go on to the top two teams. First off, Mercedes. Now, I think Mercedes, it's hard to say about today because I still think they have had a good day, second and third. They can still easily win the Grand Prix tomorrow. I mean, no Max Verstappen has put in a great lap in that, but we've seen in the past Lewis Hamilton able to take the fight to Max Verstappen on race day when Max has, out-qualified him. So it's not at all impossible for Mercedes to win. I mean, of course, Max could have a problem. We'll have to see. But I think if you look at the pace difference between Red Bull and Mercedes, I know Max is 0.4 clear, but I think that is a lot to do with Max Verstappen rather than it is Red Bull. I think it's very close between those two. Dare I say something that you wouldn't catch me saying 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I would say Red Bull are probably marginally quicker at, this track this weekend. By, say, a tenth of a second. And I know, again, Max Verstappen was 0.4 clear, but I think that is a lot more to do, again, with Max Verstappen being Max Verstappen rather than Red Bull having a car that quick. So it is still close, without a doubt. I think the race tomorrow will be very interesting. If Verstappen and Hamilton do get away 1 and 2, then I think we are in for a race-long battle between Verstappen and Hamilton. Be very interested to see as well in terms of tyre wear, who is better looking after their tyres? Not in terms of the drivers, but more in terms of the teams. You know, do Mercedes still have very good tyre management? Do Red Bull have good tyre management? I really am interested to see that, because I think if the race, when it starts, if it's Verstappen leading from Lewis Hamilton, it's going to come down to tyre management as to who wins the Grand Prix out of Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. I don't see Valtteri Bottas, to be honest, being a factor. No disrespect to Bottas, but he hasn't looked quick this weekend. I know he's third on the grid. He's not that far off his teammate, but I don't think Valtteri will play a big role in terms of winning the Grand Prix unless the two ahead of him have some kind of issue. So it really is Verstappen versus Hamilton for the win. And again, it will come down to tyre management. Can't say, though, who is better at that, because we don't know that as of yet. I'm assuming it's going to be Red Bull slightly. So that will favour Max, but that will favour Max, of course, if that is the case. I might be proven wrong on that, but it's still going to be close. I think, honestly, if there's no safety cars, I could see Max winning the Grand Prix by only 2 or 3 seconds from Lewis Hamilton. I think it'll be that close. I don't think Max is going to run away with the Grand Prix tomorrow. I think if he does maintain the lead after the first lap, I could see him having a second lead at the end of the first lap. But I think once we get into the race for proper, I think Hamilton and Verstappen are going to be lapping around the same time, basically all of the Grand Prix. And it will come down again to time management, pit stops, undercuts, overcuts, stuff like that. Also, the start will be very important. I think if Lewis Hamilton does get into the lead, I think it'll be very hard for Max Verstappen to just catch him and pass him like, he's a massively slower car or driver, because I don't think that'll be the case. So, yeah, tomorrow it is Verstappen versus Hamilton. I'm very happy to say that, because I didn't think that'd be the case at all. And honestly, I'm hoping Hamilton does get into the lead on the first lap, because I think it's more likely we'll get them two wheel to wheel if Max is chasing Lewis rather than the other way round, because I do think Red Bull again have marginally the quicker car by about 1/10 of a second. So hopefully that does happen. We have Hamilton versus Verstappen, but hopefully it's Hamilton ahead to start with, and then after that we'll see what happens, because I think again that's the best chance we've got of getting a wheel-to-wheel battle for the win between those two. Valtteri Bottas, I think most likely, unless he has horrible tyre wear, he should finish in 3rd place. I do, though, think Pierre Gasly, again, if Valtteri Bottas has really bad tyre wear, I think Pierre Gasly could upset Bottas, because Gasly is driving way better than Bottas, and the AlphaTauri of Gasly will be starting on the medium compound, the same compound as Valtteri. So there might be a bit of trouble there. And if Valtteri has a poor start, which he has had quite a few times in the last year or so, that will definitely affect things. But if he gets away fine, then he should finish in 3rd place. With again only him having really bad tyre trouble being the only thing stopping him from getting a podium, at least, in the Grand Prix tomorrow. But yeah, Mercedes got a fight in their hands. There's no doubt about it. Even if they get into the lead, unless Max Verstappen has a big problem on the first lap or gets knocked out on the first lap, then I think it's going to be, if Mercedes win, they're going to have to really work really hard for it. Probably the hardest they've worked for a victory in a couple years, to be honest. Looking good for the Grand Prix, no doubt about it. Now, with Red Bull, as I said, they do have, I think, marginally the quicker car. I think as long as Max can maintain the lead at the end of the first lap and just kind of do what he did in Abu Dhabi, which is make sure at the pit stops he's far enough ahead to avoid being undercut or overcut, whatever it is from Mercedes-Benz, then he should win the Grand Prix. But again, it comes down to whether one of the teams has really poor tyre management, and if it's Red Bull, then that will hurt him and help Mercedes. If there's a poor start, that could really hurt his race. It's going to come down to fine margins, I think, between Verstappen and Hamilton. I don't think it will be a dominant win for Max Verstappen tomorrow. If it is, that's seriously impressive, and I think that does put a marker down from him going forward for the rest of the season. But if it goes how I think it will, then yeah, it's going to be a tight-knit battle between Verstappen and Hamilton with only 2 or 3 seconds covering it. The strong majority of the time. Cannot wait to see that battle. Now, Sergio Perez, of course, he qualified 11th, mainly because he just wasn't quick enough on the medium compound to finish ahead of enough soft tyre runners in Q2. Now, of course, it's disappointing for Red Bull. They don't want this to be, yet again, another second driver in the car who's just, not good enough. But again, there were circumstances. Perez, again, being on the medium. If he was on the soft, it would have been a different story. I think Perez probably would have qualified in 3rd place, 4th at worst, if he was in Q3, because he wasn't miles off Max. He was 4 or 5 tenths off most of the time. So I think he probably would have ended up, P3, P4 on the grid, which is where we thought he should be. But in the race, he can still finish in the top 5 easily, because he'll be able to start whatever tyre he wants, which will most likely be the medium compound. And then, the Red Bull car is probably the best car on, at this Grand Prix weekend, just about from the Mercedes. So, as long as he keeps it together, doesn't have any dramatic moments, I think Perez should probably finish, say 5th tomorrow. Will still be hard because, Ferrari are looking pretty good. McLaren are looking good. AlphaTauri are looking good. So, it will be difficult. And, of course, a first lap incident will not help if he has that like he did at the Sakhir Grand Prix. When, of course, he won that Grand Prix. But I still think Perez can get a very good result. But Red Bull definitely tomorrow can win the Grand Prix. In all seriousness, I know I've been going on 2 or 3 weeks in a mostly serious but kind of sarcastic manner as well about how our Red Bull, they've not got the car. Now that, they are, or they've got the position they have for the Grand Prix, they really should. I wouldn't say they should be winning the Grand Prix, but they've got a great chance. And as long as the start goes, the way it should normally, there's no reason why they can't win the race. Because again, I do believe they have just about a quick enough car and the quicker car to get the job done this weekend. Whether they'll have a quick enough car after this weekend is a completely different story, because the next Grand Prix track, Imola, is a completely different track. And so is Portimao and the Circuit de Catalunya later on in the early part of May. So, we'll see when it comes to those Grand Prix whether Red Bull do have a properly quick car for the season. But this weekend, no doubt, Max Verstappen in that Red Bull, and Red Bull overall, I do think just have the slightly quicker car. And I think, as I will now prove, that's not just down to Red Bull. It's also down to Honda as well. Because, of course, Honda brought forward, because this is their last year in F1 for now, they brought forward what was supposed to be the power unit in 2022 to 2021. And there's been talk of, big gains on the power side. And I think, honestly, now that I'll get into the top speeds, you'll kind of see that. So, it might be a bit hard to see, but if you look closely enough, you should be able to see it. I'll read it off anyway. So, these are 4 different speed traps. So, there's, one speed trap there, which I think is the maximum speed trap on the far left. Now, Sebastian Vettel is first in that, and then it's Mazepin, then Yuki Tsunoda in 3rd, then Latifi and Gasly. So, 2 Honda-powered teams there in the top 5, with I think 3 Mercedes-powered teams. So, and you can really, if you look at the speed traps here, the theme really is Honda and Mercedes are at the very top. So the start-finish line, you got 2 AlphaTauris in 1st and 2nd, and then the next 4 cars, 5 cars, 6 cars, 7 cars, 6 cars of Ricciardo, Russell, Perez, Verstappen, Norris and Vettel are either Honda or Mercedes powered, and it looks as though Honda do have the slight edge over Mercedes in terms of power. You can see on the start-finish line, of course, different cars have different setups, so that will play a factor, but it looks as though the Honda-powered teams have, say, a slight edge over Mercedes. And then you got, intermediate 1, Gasly's topping that, Verstappen's 4th, with the 2 Mercedes-powered McLarens in 2nd and 3rd, Leclerc in 5th, that's pretty good for him. And then again, intermediate 2, the top 2, Honda-powered. And then the next 4 is Mercedes-powered, and then 2 Honda-powered teams, the other 2 Honda-powered cars, rather, Verstappen and Perez. So you can clearly see there, Honda, I would say, judging by this, considering, again, this is a power circuit, the next real power circuit we're going to, I'd say, is Baku, which is what? The 6th race of the season at the start of June. I mean, I know the middle sector is very twisty and turny, but if you don't have any good straight line speed, you're going to get killed around that track. And then the race after is Canada, another power track. So you'd have to say, until we get to those races and maybe something will change there, it looks as though Honda have the most power. It's still close. Mercedes aren't miles off. Ferrari as well, you can definitely see have improved. They're not dramatically low down. They're still not as... They haven't got the power of Honda and Mercedes. I think that's clear to see. From this, though, and it is also hard to say Ferrari versus Renault in terms of power, because there's only 2 Renault-powered cars when there's, 6 Ferrari-powered cars. But it does look as though Ferrari have more power than the Renault-powered, Renault power unit. So, to me, which is actually quite exciting in terms of the best power units, at the moment, I stress, this is not going forward for the rest of the season, but it looks as though it's Honda first, just from Mercedes, and then Ferrari 3rd, and then Renault 4th. That's how it looks. Maybe Renault, again, in a couple months, will kind of get back up there, but that's how it looks to me at the moment, with Renault back down. And you can see the Alpine cars, they're, compared to the Honda-powered cars, they're quite a bit down. At the start-finish line, they're, 6 kilometers down? And the speed trap, intermediate 1, they're 3 kilometers down, I think. And then intermediate 2, it's 4 kilometers. So compared to Honda, there's quite a sizable gap between Honda and Renault. But I'd say Honda first, just from Mercedes, and then Ferrari 3rd. And then the gap between Ferrari and Renault in terms of power is not much. I think Ferrari are slightly ahead, but I don't think it's much, the gap between those 2. So that's very interesting to see, and I think very exciting for the season ahead. And I think that might explain as well why Alpine are so slow compared to this time last year at these type of circuits, because they had probably one of the quickest cars in a straight line, and now they're looking like one of the slowest. So, yeah. But now that we've gone through that, let's get on to the best sectors. Now, this will give us a good indicator as to, again, kind of who's, got the quicker power units, but also aerodynamically, who so far looks as though they've got the best aerodynamic packages. Sector 2 is really the best place to look for that, because Sector 1 and Sector 3 is really about power. The Sector 1, Max Verstappen, of course, quickest in that. He's quickest in Sector 2 and Sector 3 as well. But the gap between Verstappen and the rest is at its biggest in Sector 2. It's, almost 2.5 tenths of a second, when in Sector 2 or Sector 1 and Sector 3, which are quicker than Sector 2, granted, but again, you look at the gap. He's only barely quicker than Hamilton in Sector 1 and Sector 3, but in Sector 2, it's 1/4 of a second. So Red Bull aerodynamically look very strong, and then that power they have from Honda is giving them that slight edge over Mercedes that they didn't have a year ago. And then really Sector 2, I think, has to be the area of most interest after we just looked at the top speeds, because kind of explained, where everyone is in terms of power. So Sector 2, you've got Ferrari very strong. Ferrari actually ahead of McLaren and AlphaTauri in that second sector, and not too far behind Mercedes either. They're lapping about the same in that middle sector, so Ferrari aerodynamically look pretty good. The only thing that's lacking is power, because they're only just above Renault by the looks of it in terms of power output at this current point. So they are still lacking power. That is still, by the looks of it, their biggest weakness. But aerodynamically, definitely a lot stronger than the Ferrari of a year ago, which is very good news, because if Ferrari can keep improving the power output, then by, the second half of the season, Ferrari might actually be able to get back into that zone they were in a couple years ago where they were able to fight for podiums. They might be able to do that. But again, as long as they keep improving, which is hard for them. And then you've got McLaren in the second sector look pretty good. And then AlphaTauri look pretty good, I would say. And then after that, it's very hard to say who has the better aerodynamic package. I think we can definitely say Haas have the worst one. They're just overall the worst in everything. I mean, look, they're 19th and 20th in every sector. But I think we could probably say aerodynamically, I'd say Red Bull will probably have the best car. Then it's Mercedes. Then it's Ferrari. And then after that, it's probably McLaren 4th. And then, say, AlphaTauri 5th. And then 6th, 7th, and 8th. It's hard to say. I think Williams are probably 9th, and then it's Haas in 10th. But, again, between Aston Martin, Alpine, and Alfa Romeo, they're all around the same, I would say. Maybe you could say Aston Martin are slightly ahead, but, again, hard to say there. But, yeah, I think we've learned definitely so far in qualifying a lot already about the season ahead, because, if this continues, this type of who's good in certain parts, who's good aerodynamically and who does have the power and who doesn't, if this continues for a majority of the season, then this will really help us, be able to predict a lot easier what is actually going to happen. It does actually make me a bit more excited from Ferrari's point of view for the next couple races, because, of course, they're a bit more aerodynamic centered, Bahrain being a power track, and that, by the looks of it, is still a bit of a weakness for them. So, yeah, Ferrari looking better. And as long as they can improve the power unit, they might be able to get podiums on pure pace later in the season. But let me go back to this picture. I just want to come to you guys in the chat to get your thoughts about what I just talked about there with the top speeds and sector times. Do you agree? And what do you think that means for the rest of the season? Do you think Ferrari, by the looks of it, do you think if they can improve that power unit, do you think Ferrari can get back to, say, third best, your third quickest team? Again, if they keep improving the power unit, let me know in the chat and the comment section as well. And I'll try to read out your comments. Right, let me have a look. Great to see so many people here, as always. Rins says, surprised Ferrari were that fast. Bram says, I wouldn't say Verstappen is almost 0.3 quicker than Hamilton on one lap pace. I basically agreed with that as well. I think in the race, maybe for the first lap, Max might, say if he is in the lead, Max might pull a bit of a gap, say a second or so, but he's not going to pull away at 0.4 of a second a lap. He's not going to, because that's just not the way it works in Formula 1. Thanks, Chazza, for another stream. No problem. Thank you for coming along. And without you guys, it wouldn't be a stream. Francisco says, Honda engine looking great on their last season of Formula 1. They might be regretting leaving, because that's the thing. Next season, the power units are frozen, I think, till what, 2025. So Honda could have the most powerful engine on the grid, and they won't be here to reap the benefits, which I think basically sums up Honda's time in Formula 1 since 2015, where it's just wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, at the moment, I'd say Honda first, Mercedes second, Ferrari third, Renault fourth, which I got to say for Renault, that is really disappointing because, again, last year at power circuits, they looked really good. This year, if you look at that speed trap, they look quite slow. I mean, they've lost a lot compared to Honda. Again, they're 4 or 5 kilometers down. That's, I think Martin Brundle, he does this so brilliantly in terms of illustrating how big of a difference that is. Of, if you were hit by a car at 5 kilometers an hour, you would know about it. That's how big the difference is. Mika says this channel is underrated. Thank you very much for that. Means a lot. Vinton says Ferrari had a full year to concentrate almost 100% on the new engine, and whilst they are quicker, it's hard to see them closing the deficit to Merc and Honda. I will say, even though maybe I was getting certain people a bit too excited there by saying, Ferrari just improved the power unit, they might get some podiums. It will be hard, definitely, to close that gap, because development this season won't be as open and as easy for all the teams, because you've got 2022 around the corner and you've got the new, the token system. Also, certain teams have more time in the wind tunnel to improve their car aerodynamically because of the new structure, I guess, in Formula 1 with prize money and just making it fairer. I think it was explained on Sky F1 that, the lower down in the championship you finished the previous season, the more time in the wind tunnel you'll get the next season. So because Ferrari was so bad last season, they get, I think, is it 12% more wind tunnel time than Mercedes this season. So aerodynamically, if they keep improving like they have in the winter, then they might be able to close even more on that or in that aspect. But yeah, in terms of the power unit, unless they come up with some incredible upgrade, it will be hard for them to catch Honda and Mercedes, because they're still lacking 3.5, maybe at most 4 kilometers an hour by the looks of it. So, and again, if something hit you at that speed, you'd know about it. So it is, in Formula 1 terms, a pretty big difference. So yeah, but at least things are looking better for Ferrari. At least we have that. And if Leclerc can qualify 4th in Bahrain, a power track, and only be, 7/10 off pole, when Ferrari have the 3rd best engine, that's pretty good. I mean, again, if Ferrari can have a decent start to the season and Leclerc can continue being that great, I mean, he could end up at Imola or Portimao or the Circuit of Catalunya in a month's time. If Ferrari continue in this vein of form, Ferrari could end up being not that far away from pole position at certain races where power means less. So, yeah. I think the only thing with tomorrow, and we'll get onto Ferrari in a bit, but the only thing that could derail that, maybe this early form from Ferrari, if it does start off well, is if they still have really bad race pace, which of course we won't know until tomorrow. But by the way, good evening to Daniel from the Netherlands. Let me look at some other comments here if I can. Could you give your opinions of Haas, Chaz? I will later on when we get towards them. It's not going to be much, to be honest, because I think as the sector times showed, they have easily the worst car. It's not even close. Ronan Brady, great to see you, by the way. He says, I disagree, Chaz, about Honda. If they were not leaving, then there would be no freeze, so they would have to keep spending. Maybe there won't be a freeze for 2022, but I think that's still up for debate, because they were already talking about an engine freeze before Honda decided to leave. I think Cyril Abitbol for Renault when he was there was talking about it. So I don't think necessarily it was off the table, but yeah. And also says Ronan Brady, I wonder about Renault's commitment to F1. The engine development seems non-existent since last year. Well, 2019 and 2020, there was definitely an improvement, and they made a step up to where they really should have been when they had Red Bull as a customer. But now it seems they've made a step back. I mean, they're not as far off as they used to be compared to Ferrari and Mercedes back in 2017, 2018, when it was quite frankly embarrassing. But yeah, I think... But again, looking at the speed traps as we did, it doesn't look good for Renault. And I think actually it makes Fernando Alonso's drive look even better because aerodynamically they probably only have the 7th best car by the looks of it. And they have the least power. So look, when I put it in those terms, makes Fernando's drive seem great, doesn't it? So anyway, move on from them and go on to McLaren. P6 and P7 for Ricciardo and Norris. I think overall, though, with this result, I think they'll be happy-ish. I think satisfied is another word they would probably use for this result. I think the biggest caveat, though, or the biggest thing that would derail their maybe positive thoughts towards this result is that they couldn't get into the top 10 in Q2 on medium tyres. So they will be starting the race on the soft compound tyres. Now, if they get a great start to the Grand Prix and they build some sort of a gap to the rest, then great. But if they stay around where they are on the grid, that's going to affect them because they're going to have to pit earlier. They might be under threat more so from Perez, Tsunoda, the Alfa Romeos, who I'm sure are going to start on at softest, probably the medium. So McLaren are in for a very tough race. I'd be surprised if they could finish in the top 5 because they just don't seem to quite have, and they didn't seem to quite have in the race the pace. The only hope for them is a few retirements behind them and Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari have poor race pace. If that happens, they could probably get a top 5, but it doesn't look great, or as great as I thought it would for McLaren going into the Grand Prix. It's still looking pretty decent, but compared to where they thought they would be and where I thought they would be, there's definitely a hard race in for them, no doubt about it. And again, the only hope they can have is some retirements and the Ferrari struggle with their tyres. Because if Ferrari, if they've really improved on that aspect as well, the tyre management, Ferrari should beat McLaren tomorrow. Because if Carlos Sainz had not had a poor final run in Q3 and had improved, Carlos Sainz probably would have out-qualified his teammate because Carlos was ahead of Leclerc throughout the entire qualifying. Carlos Sainz might have qualified 3rd. So I think Ferrari legitimately, and as we saw with the sector times that I showed a minute ago, Ferrari, aerodynamically wise, have the stronger car by a tenth and a half over McLaren. So if Ferrari have solved those race pace tyre wear woes, then Ferrari should be quicker over the course of the race, and I think probably have the slightly stronger driver lineup as well, which will help them. So their fight is really, Ferrari. I don't think they'll be fighting with Gasly, because as long as Gasly doesn't have a problem, he should be much quicker, because the AlphaTauri looks that slight bit quicker, and also he's on the medium, is Gasly, so once we get 10 laps or so into the Grand Prix, Gasly should be much quicker than the McLarens, and Yuki Tsunoda, I'm sure, will be coming through as well. So, tough race for McLaren. Very tough race. Hopefully, though, there are some points there for them. Next up, Ferrari, and I think Ferrari, honestly, have had a very good day. Charles Leclerc P4, great result. Carlos Sainz 8th, as I said a minute ago, if he improved his final run, it could have easily been 3rd on the grid. That is the improvement they have made. And I think this is definitely clear confirmation of what Ferrari was saying during the winter, that they have made a big step up, because at the Bahrain Grand Prix of 2020, a few months ago, I don't even think they got into the top 10, did they? With any of their cars. And if they did, it was barely. And now they look as though they have probably the third best car here in Bahrain. And if any of the top three have a problem, and, Gasly doesn't quite have the pace, no reason why they can't finish on the podium. No reason at all. Now, it is still Ferrari. They are still clowns. They will still fuck it up somehow with one of their drivers. But if they can put away the, the clown makeup and not whip out the circus, then they should have, again, at worst, the fourth quickest car tomorrow, and should be getting a top 5 or 6 finish, say, with Charles Leclerc. So yeah, Ferrari looking good. And as I showed with the sector times and the speed traps, the power unit has definitely improved. They're not too far away from the most powerful power unit. Still, for 3 or 4 kilometers an hour, that's still a ways to go for where they want to be. Aerodynamically, they are, probably third by the looks of it at the moment. So yeah, I think Ferrari, again, looking a lot better. Good to see, but there's still a lot of hazards in the race tomorrow, so we'll see on that. But if you're a Ferrari fan, you should be positive, because you're definitely going to have a better season. I mean, even if Ferrari fuck up a lot, the car is so much quicker than 2020 that the drivers, I think, sometimes will even exceed the clownery and buffoonery on the pit wall at times to still get some great results. And remember, Ferrari last year had 3 podiums, even though they were god-awful. So I think Ferrari are in for a much better season, and a season that will give fans a lot more hope. And I think definitely look out for Carlos Sainz tomorrow, because he does have more pace than 8th place. That is for sure. Now, Aston Martin. Lance Stroll in 10th. I think that's a very good job. Hard to say if Aston Martin are going to be massively quicker tomorrow. Doesn't seem as though they are going to be. I think the only hope for them is that, again, there's a couple retirements ahead if, say, Stroll is going to get a few points for them. But, with Perez behind and Yuki Tsunoda behind and the Alfa Romeos there as well, I can't really see Aston Martin, scoring 8 or even 6 points tomorrow. Probably most likely at most going to be 4 or 2 with Lance Stroll, which would be 8th or 9th place. Sebastian Vettel 18th. The reason he ended up 18th was because of Nikita Mazepin's spin at turn 1, which affected not just him, but Esteban Ocon as well, which was a shame, but that's the way it is. That's, if you're in that part of the grid, and you're, having to set a final lap just to escape, then, you've got to kind of maybe not expect these things to happen, but maybe don't let it get to that point. Not so much Sebastian Vettel, but the team. But yeah, I think Aston Martin, they're not in for a race tomorrow that will be anywhere near as strong as it was maybe looking to be coming into the season. And they definitely will not be as quick as they were when they were racing points at the Bahrain Grand Prix in 2020, where Perez, should have got 3rd, and then Stroll retired from the Grand Prix, but probably was on for a strong points finish as well if he finished that race. So not going to be as strong as that. Aston Martin have probably, I would say, the 6th best car, it looks as though at the moment. It's definitely still a point scorer, this car, in the hands of Vettel and Stroll, and those two are still very good drivers, but it's not, it's not a car that's going to finish 5th or 6th in a Grand Prix yet. It's just not quite there. And I think, honestly, when we get to Imola, Portugal and Spain, it might prove that even more, that they're just not quite in the top 5 on the grid for quickest cars. So yeah, not looking great there, but points is still on, and hopefully Sebastian Vettel will have a mistake-free and trouble-free Grand Prix tomorrow. Now, Alpine. Esteban Ocon, of course, ended up 16th. Again, because of Mazepin's spin, or Maz's spin. Nothing he could do. He didn't look that quick anyway in Q1, so yeah, it was hard to see Ocon really seriously scaring anyone in the top 10 today. But Fernando Alonso, P9, and as I've showed with the sector times and the speed traps, that has to be one of the best drives, because again, the Renault looks like it's the least powerful in a straight line, and the Alpine looks as though it's probably the 8th best car on the grid aerodynamically at this current point. That could easily change, of course, in 3 weeks when we get to Imola. Aerodynamically could be completely different for all the teams in Imola, so just because the order is what I kind of think it is at the moment, doesn't mean that's what it's going to be at Imola. Just need to stress that. But it looks as though Alpine have, say, ahead of Williams and Haas, who are probably the two backmarker teams, the slowest midfield car. And there you go, Fernando Alonso, 9th place. That just sums up Fernando Alonso, doesn't it? Bad car, great performance. But tomorrow's going to be hard, because again, he doesn't have the straight line speed. He's got Perez behind him, who will easily beat him as long as Perez finishes. Tsunoda should easily beat him. And then if the Alfa Romeos get close enough, they should be in strong contention. Lance Stroll, of course, he always gets great starts, so he might beat Alonso tomorrow. So I honestly would be very surprised if Fernando finished in the points, because there's so many cars behind him that I think have the potential to beat him. He's going to just... The only way he'll finish in the points is if he's, literally just does Fernando Alonso things. Drags incredible performance out of the car, because I just don't really see realistically how he gets a top 10 finish unless he gets really lucky and there's 5 or 6 retirements, say, from the top 15 on the grid there. But yeah, Alpine definitely struggling, very slow, and honestly, if they don't improve that car from in Imola when we get there in 3 weeks, and for the couple Grand Prix after, I think Alpine are in trouble, because compared to, say, McLaren, AlphaTauri, Ferrari, if they can start the season off really strongly, I think Alpine might lose ground very quickly, just like they did really in 2020, which is why Renault, because of course Alpine, Renault, same team basically, that's why Renault finished 5th, because they start the season too slow, and then when they got quick, it was too late. So yeah, I think Alpine, they've really, in this next 3-week break, they've got to really improve, because it could get ugly, especially with Fernando at that team. It could really get ugly very quickly. Hopefully they can improve. Next up is AlphaTauri. I think AlphaTauri had a good day. I know they had Yuki Tsunoda down in 13th place, but that was because, again, Tsunoda was on the medium compound. If Tsunoda was on the soft, he would have easily got in the top 10 and probably would have qualified around 5th, 6th, or 7th place. So I think AlphaTauri are fine. AlphaTauri look as though they have probably the 4th or 5th best car at the moment, say this weekend. Well, actually, no, maybe overall, I'd say around this track, probably the 3rd quickest car. I'm thinking more aerodynamically, they probably got the 4th or 5th best car, which is about where I think we all thought they were. But with Pierre Gasly, great performance. I don't blame F1 earlier voting him as driver of the day, because he was so great. Again, starts P5, will start on the medium tyres. What a drive that is. And as long as he has a trouble-free race, I think he'll finish probably 4th. If there's any trouble ahead, though, with the top 3, could be yet another Pierre Gasly podium, which would be phenomenal. Yuki Tsunoda most likely will start on the medium compound, and really from 13th on the grid, his aim needs to be, say, 7th or 8th. I don't think he'll get any higher than that, unless there is unless it's a mental race and there's a few retirements. I don't think he can aim really higher than 7th in the Grand Prix tomorrow. But AlphaTauri do have a very quick car, and around this track, because of the power unit they have, clearly for this year, that is looking very powerful, as we saw on the speed traps, Tsunoda's not going to have the hardest job in the world overtaking people. Because, again, he has a lot of power, and once you get into the slipstream with DRS with these cars, it's a lot easier to overtake than it used to be. So, Yuki Tsunoda should have a very aggressive, overtakey type of race tomorrow. So, it should be very exciting to see him. But yeah, AlphaTauri, a double points finish, I think, would be a great way to come away from this. Not just great Grand Prix weekend, but great test as well a couple of weeks ago in Bahrain. So hopefully they do get that. They've just had, again, a great month or so. And I think, honestly, when we get to Imola, it should just continue from there and be just as good. Now, final three teams. Alfa Romeo. I think Alfa Romeo are looking... I think they're looking decent for a points finish. I don't know if they'll get one. I don't think they'll get one, to be honest. But I wouldn't be surprised if they nicked a couple points, because aerodynamically their car is looking good. I think they've definitely got a chance to beat Fernando Alonso in the Alpine, as I've already said, for the reasons. They've got a lot more power, so they could definitely race a lot harder with Honda-powered teams, Mercedes-powered teams, and Renault-powered teams. Even though they've got not as much power as Honda and Mercedes, they're still, they're not miles off to the point where they just cannot race them. They'll still be able to race those cars, such as Stroll, Alonso, people like that. So Alfa Romeo definitely can score points tomorrow. I don't think they will, because I think there's too many strong cars out there compared to them, but I think they can definitely do it. And I think definitely watch out for Kimi Räikkönen, who I think will be a lot stronger in the race. Also look out for Giovinazzi to see if he does show clear improvement in his race performances. Because this type of Grand Prix where tyre wear is so important is a great indicator as to how good of a driver you are over the course of a Grand Prix. So should be able to see what they're like. Haas F1, there's nothing more to say. Their car is just, it's shit. They are so far away from where they need to be, and they are definitely the worst car on the grid. And if they beat Williams this season, they should thank their lucky stars, because that car is awful. And then, last of all, Williams. George Russell, again, doing a great job. 15th on the grid. I don't think he'll move up any further than that. I'd be very, very, very surprised if he got even in the top 12 or 13 in the race tomorrow, because I don't think that Williams will ultimately have the pace, to be up there in the points or anything. They're definitely not as quick as Aston Martin or even Alpine, to be honest. So, yeah, I think Williams, decent qualifying. The only way they're going to get points is if we have some chaos. But there you go. That is your race preview. Now, when it comes to the predictions of the Grand Prix, I will reveal those in the build-up to the race watch-along tomorrow, because I still need to give that some thought. The top 10, though, it's going to be so exciting to see who finishes in that. But we're definitely in for a very good race. There's no doubt about it. They're going to have a fight for the win, a great fight for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and even below that. It's going to be great. There's going to be fights all the way down the field, even for last place. Or, the fight not to be last, rather. It's going to be a great race. Hopefully, we don't see Max pulling away, 2.5, 3 tenths a lap out front, or Mercedes having this amazing race pace, because I do want it to be equal enough that we do get a proper driver fight on track between Max and Lewis, and then obviously the midfield will take care of itself. But guys, let me know in the chat, who do you think wins the race and who finishes on the podium? Let me know quickly before I come off this stream. Only Kart Racer says, yo man, that Japanese kid, the real deal. Looks like the kid's got potential. He definitely has. I mean, this first weekend, he's been great. I mean, people forget, I think, that in Q1, he finished second. Only a 10th off Verstappen. I know it's Q1, but considering how quick Gasly was, I mean, if he was in Q3 and he didn't get put out because simply of being on a harder compound tyre, Yuki Tsunoda would have qualified in the top 6 or 7. There's no doubt about it. Might have even out-qualified his teammate Pierre Gasly, which would have been incredible. So, yeah, look out for Yuki Tsunoda. The kid is special, and the car he's in, at least for the first 5 or 6 Grand Prix, it should be a car that puts him regularly in a top 10 scoring points position. So, yeah, look out for him in 2021. And, of course, he is going to win Rookie of the Year because Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin are in an absolute dog of a car. Right. Ronan Brady says Max Verstappen he thinks will win the Grand Prix. Francis John Ruiz says Verstappen. Vladimir Rodriguez says Max first, Lewis second, Gasly third. You know what? If Bottas has a poor race, which he did the 2 races in Bahrain and Sakhir, even though a couple of the issues he had weren't really to do with him, but his comeback through the field wasn't exactly inspiring. I could see Gasly getting a podium tomorrow. I really could. And I think the biggest reason for that is starting on the medium compound. That puts him in play enough for if anything does happen, that he's in a good position. Let me look. Fantastico rather says Verstappen to win from Hamilton, Leclerc, Gasly, Sainz, Norris, Perez, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, and Giovinazzi. The Crazy Dog says Max to win from Perez, second, Hamilton, third. Johan says, have you not seen the back of the Mercedes? The tyres will be gone in lap 15. But to be honest, even if you have a good car around this track, the tyres are normally gone by lap 15 anyway. Mecca says Verstappen to win, Leclerc podium. I think the only way I can say Leclerc podium is if he gets a great start and somehow goes up to second place or something. I could see him getting the podium then, but if he is in 4th place at the end of the first lap, then I just don't really see how he'll have the pace to keep up. If he does get a podium, though, and beats Bottas purely on pace, then what a drive by Leclerc. Alvaro says, and true, Alonso, incredible. Tony Kart Racer says, I don't particularly like Max, just rooting for Honda and hope they take it this year. Still I Rise says, wish Cyril was at Alpine. Well, he wouldn't improve the team at all. He'd probably make it even worse because he was, just not a good influence on that team. Let me look at some other comments. Dark Vader, do you think the truth about Red Bull's second seat will be revealed? After Perez's performance? There's no real secret. It's pretty clear what it is. Red Bull are built around Max Verstappen and build their car to Max Verstappen's driving style. Very similar to what Benetton used to do with Michael Schumacher in 94 and 95, and that's why there'd be such a big gap between Schumacher and whoever his teammate is. And he had so many teammates. He had, JJ Leto in 94 and 95, this is. JJ Leto, Johnny Herbert, obviously for 95, and the last race or two for 94. Jos Verstappen. You might have had someone else as well. But the reason the gap was so big is because it was literally Michael Schumacher's team. It was like Team Schumacher versus Williams, basically, for those 2 years. And that's basically what it is at the moment. It's Team Verstappen versus Mercedes. It's not Red Bull versus Mercedes. It's Team Verstappen. That's why Perez and and Albon, rather, and Gasly, were never really given they weren't given a completely fair chance against Max Verstappen, because again, it's Max's team. Since Daniel Ricciardo left, it gave Red Bull permission to build the entire team around Max Verstappen, which you can't blame them because Max Verstappen is going to be probably an all-time great driver by the time he's done. So you can't blame them for doing that, but, the only thing you can really do is just make a car so dominant that that second driver is still up there on the podium. which I guess will help Perez later this season, but didn't help him today, did it? Let me look for some more comments quickly. Carlos Gomez, the new engine upgrade is not allowed for the rest of the season. Only one upgrade at the end for next season. Good insight anyway, like the channel. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for telling me that. I'm still a bit unsure to the whole development and what you're allowed and not allowed to do, because the rules, again, are a bit different when it comes to that. Let me try and see if we can find some final few comments. What happened in Perez's second run? I don't know, but being on the medium tyre definitely didn't help. And obviously he had his first time deleted for track limits at turn 4. So if he had done that lap without getting it deleted, he probably would have got into the top 10. Probably would have ended up qualifying 3rd or 4th. And then we'd be saying, yeah, Red Bull have the best car. But hard to say because we didn't see Perez in Q3. Right, let's find a couple more, and then I think we'll come to the end of the stream. I'll end on this one from Alvaro Milon, I think it is. If I mispronounced your name at all, then sorry about that, but you know, that's just the way it is sometimes. Carlos Sainz first, Valtteri Bottas second, Alonso third. Race of chaos. Well, if that happened, then don't think I'd have a throat anymore. But there you go. There's your race preview for the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix. And of course, we will be live tomorrow for the race watch along at 3:30 p.m. UK time until about 6:30 p.m. UK time. And then live again on Monday night to recap all of the events of the race, you know, review incidents, look at data, just cover everything from the Grand Prix so that you come away with all of the insight basically as to what happened, you know, why it happened basically, and just give you the lowdown on everything. So yeah, those are the next two things coming up. And that is the end of my third stream today. I've been going non-stop basically all day. I just want to say thank you guys so much for today. It means so much. The, you know, kind comments and about my commentary and the channel and that. It honestly means so much. I don't think you guys understand how much that means. So thank you very much for that. But again, make sure to be with us tomorrow for the Grand Prix, which is sure to be a very exciting Grand Prix in Bahrain. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my channel page and subscribe there. Hit the like button. Don't forget to share this video everywhere. Comment down below what your thoughts are going into the race and who you think will be quick, who you think won't be quick. Any thoughts you want to give on qualifying, go for it. And what do you think ultimately will happen in the Grand Prix? Who is going to win? Who's going to get a podium? Just let me know what you think is going to happen. As well, don't forget to join my Discord server. Another great way to be notified as to when I go live and when I upload videos. And we have, nearly 500 people on that server. So if you want to be a part of a growing community of F1 fans, and it's a regular server in terms of messages, by the way, so you won't be disappointed, then make sure to go and join that. I think that is, about it. But yeah, live tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. UK time. That's half an hour before the race gets underway. And then we'll be live probably until half an hour after the race finishes tomorrow. Also, remember that in the UK, our clocks are going 1 hour forward, I think, tonight. So please do bear that in mind in terms of joining us in time, because we're going from GMT to BST in a few hours' time. I think 5 hours from now, or 4.5 hours from now, I think it is. So please do bear that in mind, again, so you do not miss us tomorrow. Just make sure you're here half an hour before the race starts, and, you know, you'll be on time, basically. But until tomorrow's sure to be very exciting Grand Prix in Bahrain, the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix, and the watch along that will go with that, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.